Hello everyone, a very good morning. Welcome to the Password Manager Pro Masterclass. My name is Praveen and I will be the presenter for today. So before we get into the today's webinar, I will give you 30 seconds time. Kindly confirm through the chat whether the display is well and clear and the audio is audible. I will give 30 seconds for you. If you, in case you have any difficulties, please raise it through the chat panel. All right. So I got a confirmation from Corey stating that it looks good and sounds clear. That's good. So with no further delay, let me get into today's session. So it's going to be on user roles and management. So this master series we have started on July 12th, and we are going to do it Thursday every 2 weeks once till November 15th. And this is going to be the complete schedule. We have already completed three classes on Discover and Vaulting, managing the SSH keys and SSL certificates, automatic password resets, and today is on user roles and management. If in case you guys have missed any of these previous session and if you want to have a look into it, you can just come to the registration page where you can listen to the webinar or the video, and you can also download and have a look at the question and answer sessions, questions which are being asked during those webinar session. All right. So now today's session is going to be on diving deep into user roles and management. Let's get into it. And of course, this webinar is also going to get recorded, and we will upload it in the registration page itself. So you can just have a look at mid of next week so that you will have the recorded video. And yeah, so if in case you have any questions during this session, please feel to raise it through the chat panel or the questions. Then I will answer them towards the end of the session. Okay, so this session is going to be for next 30 minutes, and we will have like 5 to 10 minutes of question and answers followed by it. Okay, so the agenda for today is going to be how to add and manage users and user groups inside Password Manager Pro, uh, the different types of roles and the custom roles option. And we do have the authentication, various first factor authentication, as well as the second factor authentication, and a few privileges which can be granted at the user group level. So the crux of this webinar is on the user management available in Password Manager Pro to access this application. So first, we will have a look at users and user groups. Okay, so first one is going to be adding users manually. So how we are going to do it? Once you log into the Password Manager web console, click on Users, Add User manually. Here you can provide the first name, last name, and the username to access our application. And the password for that username, you can either get it generated and sent to your email, or you can use the username as password, or you can specify it manually. Whatever, even if you go for any one of these options, but during the first login, you type the password, it will automatically ask you to change the password for security reasons. And the email address is your email address. It's self-explanatory. So this access level and access scope, I will discuss in the next few slides in detail. Access level is nothing but assigning the user with the respective role, and the scope is the privilege which he is going to have. And apart from that, department and location, just for your convenience to differentiate the users, whether the mobile access should be enabled or the browser extension should be enabled. And if in case you're going for any certificate based or smart card based authentication, we do provide you a provision to import the certificate over here. Apart from that, you can also select the language in which the Password Manager Pro should be available for the user. So these are the various languages which is being supported inside the application, right? So this is the first way of adding the users manually. So the next one is going to be from the Active Directory, all right? So I will show you how we are going to do it. In Active Directory, you can click from import from Active Directory. You have to provide your domain credentials here, followed by so in this screen, you can either type in the user group or the OU which you would like to import. Okay. However, the best practice is to leave these three fields blank and click on Fetch Groups and OUs, which will automatically enumerate and show you the complete list of groups and OUs which are available in the Active Directory. Okay, so that is the best way of doing it. And sorry about that. Yeah, I will quickly try to enumerate and show you the list here. Give me 1 minute. Sorry, the credentials for some reason is not working. However, yes, as I mentioned, once you type in this information and when you leave these three fields blank and when you click on fetch groups and OUs, it's going to enumerate the complete list of user groups and OUs available in the Active Directory, from which you can select the ones which you would like to import. And we also have a synchronization interval. So when you're importing a particular group or OU, you can provide a sync interval here. So based on the sync interval, if a user is added in future to that particular group or OU, it will be automatically added inside Password Manager Pro. No manual work is required. So that's the purpose of the synchronization interval, to import the users from Active Directory. And the next one is going to be from Azure AD. So same way you imported users from the Active Directory, you can also import it from Azure AD. Here you will be able to provide the domain name. The client ID is something which you get from your Azure Active Directory screen. So you have to register Password Manager Pro as an application in it. Once you integrate it, you will get the ID for the client ID from the Azure Web Console. And you can type in the username and password, and same way you can click on fetch groups. So it will enumerate and show you the complete user groups which are available in the Azure AD. Okay, and we also have a synchronization interval here, uh, using which you can automatically import a user if he has been added to the Azure AD. The same way it works similar to the Active Directory authentication. And the next one is going to be from LDAP. So LDAP here, you have to provide the URL, the credentials again, the base DN, example here of the base DN, and you have to also provide the search filter. Okay, so the example of the search filter is available here. By default, we support Microsoft Active Directory, Novel eDirectory, and Open LDAP. So these are the types which has been available here. If in case you have any other LDAP server, then you have to click on others and do it. You can give all the labels manually, and you can still go for any other supported LDAP server type. All right. Now for the LDAP, the synchronization interval is not going to be available in the import screen. Instead, you will have the admin LDAP screen, where you will find the LDAP server details. So if you want to create the schedule, you can simply enable the schedule over here for that particular URL or the group or the search filter, whatever you're providing it. Based on it, you will be able to enable the schedule. So this is about the LDAP synchronization. So the next form of importing the users is going to be from a text file. So from a text file, you can import users inside Password Manager Pro. So how do you construct the text file? It's going to be same way you added a user manually. So that way, if when you add a user manually, these are the headers for it: first name, last name, username, email address. So you have to use these headers in the text file, and you can either have it in a comma or tab separated format, and you can import them inside this application. So the ones which are highlighted here in yellow are going to be the mandatory fields. So the other fields, based on your convenience, you can add it. So you can either do it from a normal file, or you can also go for a password protected zip file. If it is a password protected zip file, the text file basically, then you have to provide the password of that file. This is to ensure that you're importing the users from a secure file system, right? Nothing more than that. Okay, so these are the various ways in which you are going to add users inside Password Manager Pro. And the next one is going to be user groups. So when you're importing users from Active Directory or LDAP, you can also import the groups or OUs. And those groups or OUs will be created as a user group in Password Manager. So here you will be able to see the complete list of user groups available. So these are the ones which have been imported from my domain. You can see it. Apart from it, we also have an option where you can provide your group manually here, and you can add users to that group. You can either do it one by one like this, or you can select a bulk of users and click on add to group, which will add all these users to that particular group. So this bulk operation can be performed. So this manual group is going to be present only inside the Password Manager Pro application. Okay. So this is about the users and the groups. And the next topic is going to be on user actions. So we have certain actions which can be performed at the user level. For example, you can click on this user actions, and you can add this user to multiple groups. And when you click on the edit user, that's where you will be able to modify any of the user details like that: access level, access scope, email address. All those stuff can be done by clicking on user action and edit user. Okay, and we also have an option here. If you're going for the local PMP authentication, then you can also log the users. If in case you go for Active Directory or LDAP or Azure AD integration, we do not store those username. We do not store the passwords inside the Password Manager Pro application. Every time when the user tries to provide the credentials, we directly authenticate from the domain controller or whatever authentication mechanism you're using. We connect to that server and we authenticate, right? So if that particular, let's take an example of an Active Directory integration. So let's say you have a user in AD whose account is locked or deleted, or he's been removed from a group, anything. So if his access has been disabled in Active Directory, then the user will still not be able to log in inside Password Manager Pro, and you have to manually, the same way you have those lockout options in Active Directory. But if in case you go for a local authentication, then you also have an option here to log that user from the Password Manager Pro itself, right? So this is about the user actions which can be performed in Password Manager Pro. We do have some bulk operations, like you can select multiple users and enable two-factor authentication for them. Okay, and you can also restrict the mobile access, restrict browser extension, change the tab settings, which is basically when the user logs in, whether he should see the connections tab, resources tab, or the dashboard. So you can set that option from here. Okay, so yeah, this is all the user group settings. And yeah, next let's get into the next feature, which is the default and custom roles. All right, so default roles, we have admin, password admin, privilege admin, super administrator. I would say super administrator is not a role, it's basically a elevated privilege. So I will explain about that. Password user and auditor. So let's look into each of this role in detail and see what exactly it does. So administrator is the one who has the complete access over the product. Okay, so he will be able to add users, make any configuration changes from the web console, like configuring SMTP settings, all those stuff. Okay, and you can also add the passwords and share it with other users. Whereas the password administrator, he cannot make any configuration changes. You can only add the passwords and share it with other users. And there is something called privilege administrator who has more access than administrator. This particular privilege administrator role is introduced in PMP version 9701, which I mean, from PMP 9700, we have introduced few features which will help our customer in achieving the GDPR compliance. So those GDPR compliance feature, whenever you want to enable it or disable it, we need an administrator exclusively for it to approve those controls. So privilege administrator is nothing but we have introduced the GDPR related settings, and those settings can be enabled or disabled only by this privilege administrator. Other than that, he has all the other privileges as an administrator. And these three roles only, admin, password admin, and privilege admin, will only have the ability to add the passwords inside Password Manager Pro. I mean the enterprise passwords. The other two roles, auditor and user, they will not have the ability to add the passwords. They can only make use of the passwords which is being shared by an admin, password admin, or a privilege admin. The only difference between the auditor and the user is auditor will have access to audits and reports compared to the user. Okay, so that's the difference. I will quickly get to a tabular column to explain these roles here. So if you see administrator, you can manage the users, resources, passwords, view the passwords, view the audits and reports, but privacy and security controls, you cannot do it. That is something related to the GDPR. Password administrator, you can see you cannot manage the users. So anything related to the passwords, he will be able to do it. Whereas privilege administrator, he has everything which can be done by him. All right. And in addition to that, he also has access to the privacy and security controls. I will show you just an example feature of what privacy and controls are here. So this one, let's take IP restrictions. Okay, so you can give a set of IP address from which the Password Manager Pro can be accessed, or you can also disable or you can also block certain set of IPs from which Password Manager Pro can be accessed. Okay, so these kind of settings or the IP restrictions can be done only by the privileged administrator. Same way, emergency measures like disabling the API, all the remote activities which can be performed inside the Password Manager Pro can be done only by the privileged administrator. Okay, so that's these are a couple of features, but with compliance to the GDPR, he has more features to be done. or managed. Okay, we have an exclusive webinar done in the past for it, so you can just search for that in the YouTube channel and you will be able to find it. So now password users and auditors, once again, it's self-explanatory. They can only view the passwords which have been shared to them, or uh, in and the auditor, he will have access to audits and reports. Of course, as the name says, personal passwords uh, can be added and managed by every user themselves. Okay, so that's the various kind of operations or the default roles which is available in Password Manager Pro. So, and our licensing is based on the number of admins, password admins, and privilege admins. So these three roles together is considered for the purpose of licensing. We do not have any restrictions for the users, auditors, or the number of passwords which are stored inside this application. We just go by the administrative role. Okay. And what is this super administrator? Okay, so this Password Manager Pro is exclusively designed on ownership concept. When I say ownership concept, even an admin cannot see all the passwords added by other administrators. He will have only access to the passwords which has been added by him or which is shared to him. Whereas the super administrator, so you can either promote a admin, password admin, or a privilege admin to be a super administrator by changing the access scope. Okay, so access level is the default roles. Access scope is something you make him as a super admin in the tool, so you will have access to all the passwords added by all the administrators, irrespective of the role. When I mean the role, it's going to be the administrator role. So that is the super administrator access. Okay. Now, and apart from that, we also have provide you a custom roles functionality. When I say custom roles, you can create your own role in Password Manager Pro. You can click on Add Role, and when you add the role, it will give you the option on what or the actions which can be performed by the user. So you can simply select those actions and click on you can preview that role and you can create your own custom role. So we have given everything over here. So what is this one? This is called a legendary operation or an administrator operation, which means when you're creating a custom role, if you're going to select this option which has got the administrator option enabled, if you do that, then any user added to that particular role which has been created by you will be considered for the purpose of licensing. So if you just select add manually, then it's not going to be a licensing role. However, if you go for any of these operations, even if you select one operation with the administrator, that is the legendary enabled, then it's going to be considered for licensing purpose. So that's how we have enabled this custom role. Once you create your own role, you can start assigning users or even groups to it. Okay. Yeah, so that's about the default and the custom roles available in Password Manager. Now let's get into the various first factor authentications available. So the first one is going to be the Active Directory. So Active Directory, it's pretty straightforward. After importing the users from Active Directory, you can just enable this authentication mechanism, and we also support AD single sign-on. So this is different from SAML single sign-on, but let me explain what AD single sign-on is. So when a user logs into his laptop or desktop with his AD credentials, which is his domain credentials, and if he connects to the Password Manager Pro web console, he will be allowed to automatically log in inside this application without typing in the username or password manually. So this is exclusive for AD single sign-on. Okay, we make use of the NTLM mechanism here. So you have to create a computer account in the Active Directory, and you have to provide those credentials here for this single sign-on to work. All right. The next one is going to be Azure AD. So it's pretty straightforward. If you import users from Azure AD, you're going to just enable this authentication mechanism. And if you have configured any schedules, you can just edit them from this view synchronization schedules. And LDAP, same way, you can have enabled it from here. And if you want to make any configuration changes to the LDAP servers, you can just edit them or delete them and redo it from here. And the next one is SAML single sign-on, a very important one. So we support SAML 2.0 or we support SAML 2.0 for single sign-on. So here, Password Manager Pro will act as a service provider, and you can integrate it with any SAML identity providers like Okta, ADFS. So what will happen? You will log into the ADFS or Okta portal in which the Password Manager Pro application is going to be present along with all your web applications, from where you can automatically log in inside this portal. Okay. So here we support SAML 2.0 for authentication, right? And the next one is going to be the smart card certificate or PKI based authentication. So if you have smart cards on your organization, you can use that as an authentication mechanism. Also, if you have any certificate, I mean, you can use this as a certificate based authentication where you can import each and every user certificate in the browser. And whenever you try to access Password Manager Pro, you can provide those browser, I mean, you can just provide the certificate which is added in the user store in order to allow the authentication to take place. Okay. And the last one of is going to be the radius. So any radius compliant, I mean, any radius server can be configured in Password Manager Pro for authentication. We support PAP, CHAP, MSCHAP, and MSCHAP2. So these are the radius protocols we support for authentication. So you can also have users imported manually or from AD, and you can enable the radius authentication for the users, so they will be authenticated from the radius server which is being provided by you. So these are the various first factor authentication which is being supported by us. So the next one is going to be the second factor or the multi-factor authentication. The first one of it is going to be the Microsoft Phone Factor. And we also support RSA Secure ID, Google Authenticator, any radius compliant TFA, geosecurity, and one-time password sent through email. So apart from the last option, the first five is being provided by a third-party vendor, which you have to separately purchase and get it integrated inside the Password Manager Pro. So Microsoft Phone Factor, initially it was named as Phone Factor, and Microsoft has recently acquired it, and they provide the Microsoft multi-factor authentication. Okay, and the RSA, as you know, it's it is in hardware or software tokens, time-based tokens, which is going to be used as a second factor of authentication. And the next one is going to be Google Authenticator. Google Authenticator is a free app which everyone can install on their smartphones, and once again that is going to generate the time-based token for the second level of authentication. So radius compliant, any radius, for example, Vasco Digipass or Semantic YubiKeys, right? So you can use that as even Sophos can be used as a second factor of authentication here. So if it supports Radius, if your multi-factor authentication vendor supports it via Radius, then you can very well integrate it with Password Manager Pro. And Dio security, yeah, so it's on scan. It uses the time-based authentication for providing access inside the push notification, in other words. Okay, so that can be also integrated. The last one is one-time password sent through email. This one, for this to work, you have to just have the mail server settings enabled inside the Password Manager Pro applications. So once it's been enabled, the SMTP is configured. Automatically, once the users type in their AD or LDAP credentials, before it prompts for the second factor, an email will be triggered with a random generated password, which they can copy and use as a second factor of authentication, right? So yeah, this is about the various multi-factor authentication mechanisms supported in Password Manager Pro. The next or the last functionality for this presentation is the user group privileges. Okay, so we have a lot of configurations, settings which can be enabled or disabled globally for all the users from the general settings. Whereas there might be few settings you want to be restricted only for a certain set of users. So that is nothing but the user group privileges or the settings. Okay, so you click on this user group, go to user group. Next to any group, you click on the privileges. You will see various options. The first one is whether the user should manage the personal passwords or not. The second one is going to be whether they have to export the personal passwords or not. Okay, we have an option to export the personal passwords in a PDF or in a discovery format. So it can be also be done here. And um, the next one is going to be allow plain text view of passwords if auto logon is configured. So in the next session of this masterclass is going to be on the auto logon, where you can take RDP, SSH, and Telnet sessions from Password Manager Pro. So these sessions, okay, usually it will get recorded, and users will, if this option is being disabled, users will be seeing the passwords in clear text. Okay, so generally they will see it in clear text. So if you uncheck this box, they will not be able to see the passwords in clear text. And the criteria based resource groups, okay, they can be also permitted with full permission for other administrators. So this has to be enabled at the user group level. And whether to provide a reason for the password retrieval only for a certain set of users, you can enable it. And the ticket ID retrieval can be enabled from this user group level. And whether the user should have offline access on the mobile app. So Password Manager Pro obviously provides a mobile app, and the passwords can be cached in it. So if you want to enable or disable it, you can do it from here. And the fingerprint authentication, which is being supported on the smartphones to allow Password Manager Pro app to automatically log in, can be enabled or disabled. And the auto log on, the browser extension, okay, whether the autofill action should be done in the browser extension, and auto log on for the website has to be done with the browser extensions or not, that can be enabled or disabled in this session. Okay, so yeah, this is the user group privileges which I want to explain you. And apart from that, you also have an option to change the offline access. In other words, if whether the user should export the passwords in plain text or not, whether it should be in an encrypted HTML file or not, and the Dropbox sync. Okay, so or we will see about the Dropbox sync when it comes to the advanced integrations. But these are all the options using which users can export all the enterprise passwords out of the tool. And if you want to restrict it for a certain set of users, you can do it from the user group level. Okay, yeah. That's pretty much on the users and groups of this masterclass. Hope this was informative. So if you guys have any questions, please raise them here. I'm going to explain, answer all the questions. Just if in case I miss anything, I will try to answer them and post it in the registration page, as I mentioned you earlier. So we have a question here. I have a scenario for Discover server that is not part of the domain. Let's say standalone Windows web server. This server could have many local accounts. How could we manage or how could we discover accounts and password? Administrator is not same as the service account that we used for password. What requirement to collect the username and password for non-domain servers? Desktops. Okay, so I understand your question. So you are speaking about what are the requirements for managing the passwords of a non-work group, I mean a work group server which is not connected to the domain, right? This we have covered in the first topic, discover and vaulting. So you can just view this video session. We have clearly explained about it and how to manage those workgroup passwords. It's been explained in this webinar. Just to give you an overview, you have an option where if it is the non-domain member server, okay, you can go to this configure remote password reset and you can select an administrator account here. So one administrator account should be added, using which we connect to that box and discover all the accounts as well as we manage all those accounts. Okay, so how to do this in detail, please go to this webinar series which was completed on July 12th or on August 8th to learn more about it. Okay, so you can just view the webinar and we have explained in detail, right? And we got a comment stating Duo works great, by the way. Thank you so much. All right. So I don't see any other questions for today. If in case you have any questions or if you have any feedback, please do send it to password manager pro support at manageengine.com and we will be glad to assist you. I mean, answer those questions for you. And yeah, thank you once again for joining today's webinar. Hope it was useful and informative. So quickly, I will show you the next webinar is going to be on September 6th on secure remote access, which is nothing but launching RDP sessions, SSH sessions, and what are the prerequisites for it, and how those sessions are getting stored inside the Password Manager Pro, and how you can play back that. Okay, and we will also explain about the browser extensions in that next session. So please do register yourself in case you have missed to register, and definitely I will ensure that is going to be very useful for you guys. And thank you so much. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Hope it was very informative, and you guys have a nice day then. Thank you. Bye.